Now let's move on to the next topic of discussion, a review of one of my favorite heavy metal bands. And that band, of course, is a band called Rage. Now, many of you have always heard me talk about the big four of power metal on Noise Records. It was always Halloween, it was Gravedigger, Rage, and Running Wild. Those are like the four early bands on Noise Records that were considered like the big four of German power metal, in the early days. Now, this is obviously well before Ed Guy or Blind Guardian had their first album, but these were four bands that came onto the scene that really made a big impact. And Rage, who started out as a band called Avenger in the very early 80s, Rage has put out an incredible amount of albums. I've actually lost count. I think it's close to 30. I could be wrong. And over the years, the band has changed its sound. Now, the interesting thing about this record is there are some elements in here that are a little bit more predominant than they have been in past albums. So if you've ever listened to Rage's catalog, okay, when you listen to the early stuff like Execution Guaranteed or, Secrets in a Weird World, PV is singing more in this kind of higher pitched tone. He's not singing with the grit in the low register type thing as much as, say, he does on some of the later stuff. And then the band, of course, evolved from this like speed metal to like power metal. They did the Lingua Mortis orchestra stuff on Ghosts and on 13. And then you have the album Speak of the Dead, which was kind of like half symphonic stuff, then half this regular straight up heavy metal. And they've really varied it up over the years. So why am I bringing that all up? Because this record has a little bit of a different sound to it. It's actually very, very heavy. The last album, After Lifelines, if you remember, it had 2 discs. It had a lot of different kinds of material on it, a lot of different types of songs on it. This one is a little more straight to the point. It just is. And it has a song, a 2025 version of a song called Straight to Hell at the end of this. It's off the album Welcome to the Other Side. The original version is. And I'm going to go into this record first, though, before I get into that re-recorded version. So when you get to the first half of this album, one of the interesting aspects of this is, number one, this album is a lot heavier than it normally would be. And when I say heavier, there's a lot of different interesting elements into it. So when you listen to the songs, for example, especially on the first half of the album, most of the songs stay in that 3 to 4 minute range. Literally the 3 to 4 minute range. Most of those songs are straight ahead bangers. But the interesting part about it is when you're listening to the songs themselves and the main drive lines of the songs and the verses, you hear more thrash elements in that and even some elements of metalcore in there. And then when you get to the chorus, you have the classic melodic type choruses that the band would normally play. Now, if you go to past records, you've heard a little bit of that, but it's a lot more predominant on this album for about the first half of the album. And then you start getting into songs like Fire in Your Eyes, which is track 8 on here. And then the rest of the album doesn't have as much of that and has more of the classic Rage sound. So, when you get my favorite song in the album, it's called Beyond the Shield of Misery. It's actually technically the last song before the re-recorded song that they did. The riffing in that is absolutely incredibly awesome. Now, what do I think of the heavy direction that they've gone into? One of the major comments many people made was they don't like all the growling that Peavy does. That was one of the criticisms I've seen about this album. Generally speaking, it doesn't bother me because his vocal style has sort of been evolving more towards that anyway. And probably the biggest criticism friends of mine have had was the production of the vocals and the growling portions. And I think that when you get into something like that with, with a band like Rage, who has that classic power metal song sound on it, when people start commenting on that, it kind of turns folks off. I'm going to tell you folks that it doesn't really affect the album as much as you think it does. The growling and the low registered vocals that he doesn't really bother me because it fits in, especially on the first half of this album when you're playing more thrash metal riffs and you're playing more of this metalcore kind of style, in the main drive line and verses of the song before you get to the chorus parts. But it's like classic Rage, but it's a lot heavier and a lot more aggressive than what they normally would do. Not to mention the fact all of these songs are pretty straightforward. The longest track on here is Fear Out of Time. And it's 5 minutes and 17 seconds. I'm looking at it right now. But everything else is 3 to 4 minutes. So I like the extra aggression that they have in the music. I think it's a different direction from what they normally would do. They've had songs with those elements in it before. But this album has a lot. It basically dominates this album and its overall sound a lot more than, say, a lot of the previous stuff that has come out. Now, the album Straight to Hell, or that's not the album Straight to Hell, but the song Straight to Hell 2025. That the original version of that song came off of an album called Welcome to the Other Side. If many of you remember that, it came out, let me look here. When did that come out? 2001. Yeah, 2001. I had 17 songs on it. That album, from a production standpoint, was a huge disappointment for me. I think that was the album that came out after Ghosts, which came out, I believe, 1999, 2000, somewhere around there. And the production on Welcome to the Other Side, the songs were pretty good, but the production was lacking. So there is a re-recorded version of that song at the end of this record that I think is actually very, very good. I thought they did a great job. I mean, personally, I kind of go back to what Iron Savior did with the Reforged albums, where they re-recorded a lot of old stuff. The re-recordings of Iron Savior's songs off of the album Dark Assault sound a million times better than that album. That album really didn't have a great production on it. And I kind of feel the same way. I pretty much feel the same way about Straight to Hell 25. I think that this particular version sounds better than the original one. And you don't really hear me say that too often. But that's what it is, folks. That's how I feel about the record. Overall, if I'm comparing it to the Rage catalog, I'm going to need more time with it. Is it a top 10 album? Probably not. Do I like the album? Yes. I think it's very good. It's very aggressive. Peavy kind of sings more in his lower register than he typically does. And, again, it's a quality record. Rage is one of those bands where you like the records when they come out, but there are some you like a little better, and there's some you don't like as much, but you like all or most of them. There's a couple albums by the band that I'm not really that into, but this one is definitely a great record, and I think they did a really good job with keeping it kind of short and straight to the point as far as the types of songs on it. So that's where I sit on it. It's obviously an incredible power metal album with some more aggressive elements in it. And if you are used to some of the more classic styled Rage songs, it's going to be a little different for you. Hey, it's Tony here from the Metal Command Show. I want to thank you for watching this portion of the program. Since 1998, I have hosted the show, which started off as a radio program and is now into the podcast format. So I want to thank you for watching and or listening. And if you want to support the program, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any content. A lot of you have been supporting the show and really, really helping this show grow, and I cannot do it without all of you. So with that said, thanks for watching. Stay metal.